Speaking of press conferences, real quick, can you walk through I believe it was St. John's near
Yeah.
the end of the season. I was laughing out loud at your updates when they just didn't show up for the press conference for a while and it cost you your haircut. I've been dying to just hear you sort of tell this story, and just now that you're reflecting on it, months later. But I thought it was just absolutely hilarious and really, really enjoyed your updates on the situation. So what what do you remember about that day, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think that was sometime in January, and it was a week after DePaul beat Butler, so it was still kind of coming off this high, and maybe still thinking the season can be turned around. And then they lost to St. John's. It was the second loss of the season to them at home, and it was a pretty bad loss. I mean, it was a deflating loss. So you're kind of expecting, okay, they'll come into the press conference, they'll do it 5 minutes, whatever. Usually after a loss, they don't bring a player in or one player in. Usually when it's a win, it's two players. So you're kind of expecting this to be real quick. They're not going to give you a lot of information. And then you're sitting there for because usually DePaul comes in pretty fast, 5-10 minutes after a game that they're in. And you're sitting there after 10 minutes, you're like, okay, what's going on? And there weren't a lot of reporters. There was me, our assistant sports editor, and I think maybe two or three other reporters. And we're sitting there and we're like, what's going on? It's been 10 minutes, and then it starts getting towards the half-hour mark. And usually the DePaul people that are in there, kind of the camera people and all that, and the SIDs, they weren't in there anymore. You're kind of thinking, well, something big has to be going on, and we're sitting there. It's 50 minutes, and it's like, okay, well, got a haircut in an hour, got to get across the city to get there. So it's about a half an hour, ride to get to that point. So I was thinking, well, what do I do here? Do I stick it out or do I leave? I did stick it out, and they eventually came out, I think, after 90 minutes of waiting. And then eventually we found out, at the end of my end of season reporting, it was, I'm not going to name the player because he was a source and everything, but basically it was, a player kind of getting it, arguing, it was a bad loss, and they're kind of telling their feelings and kind of arguing about the direction of the team and everything. So it was really, that was kind of the reason why they came out so late, was because, they were kind of having confrontation in terms of, what happened, kind of trying to turn this thing around. And I guess, according, from hearing from other people, it kind of got a little loud, kind of maybe yelling at each other. But, it was this really weird experience, because I don't think that, in my dreams, DePaul does a lot of weird things, that's for sure. But I don't think they would have ever canceled or on a press conference, or they would have waited people to wait this long. And maybe I did think to myself, I don't think I tweeted this, but I did think to myself, if the Tribune was here, the Sun Times, or ESPN was waiting. I mean, for sure ESPN. It's just they wouldn't wait this long. They would never make ESPN wait this long. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe it's because we write maybe negative stories on them that they can get away with it. But it's DePaul, man. They will do weird stuff to you, and then they will do some good stuff to you. So it was just a weird experience, and I think looking back on it, maybe I shouldn't have tweeted that much on it, but then I guess it was a little funny looking at it now.
I found it very entertaining. Just want you to know that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. All right. So to wrap up the podcast here, so we've heard yours, one of your more interesting experiences as a student media member, and if you've got more, please share. But Mr. Doring, Mr. Brown, if you had to pinpoint one, if you had 5 minutes to tell somebody about student media and you got to tell them about one experience, what would you tell them? Good, bad, ugly? What, if you're given that opportunity like you are now, what are you going with? Because I think we're going to all have 4 pretty different stories, which is kind of the epitome of student media, is that it's kind of crazy. But what would you go with?
You go first, Chris.
Oh boy. All right. Pressure's on. Well, this is tricky. I think
I think I'm going to cheat a little bit for mine. And I'm going to do one
Do
where I
it.
wasn't actually serving as student media, but I was when I was an intern, an experience that I had.
Okay.
So it was a scholarly, it was for an internship for Butler. It was the time that I almost ran into Brad Stevens, like almost backed into him. It was
Oh no.
it didn't happen, so it's not as fun of a story. I didn't
Uh,
knock him down or anything, but it was before a game it was spring of last spring of 2019, I believe. Yeah, spring of 2019. I think they were playing the Celtics. The Pacers were playing the Celtics. I was at the Pacers game prior to the game for my internship that I had with Wish TV in Indianapolis, and so the anchor for the show was out on the court. It was a couple hours before the game, and the anchor was getting ready to give go live. And meanwhile, we were still waiting for like updates on, I can't even remember the exact circumstances, updates on player injuries. There were some big, it was near the end of the regular season. They were expecting big updates on players, would they be available or not. And so I get sent down into the hallway, back, the back hallway of Bankers Life Fieldhouse to wait for Brad Stevens and Nate McMillan to come out and give updates on players and who would be available and who wouldn't be available. And so I'm kind of just standing there off to the side, waiting for somebody to come out. I'm just not even sure where I'm supposed to stand. I'm lost. I'm wandering around the halls.
That's about right.
I mean, but I'm well, go ahead.
This is Banker's Life, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of scary down there.
It's a
Hard to
maze.
navigate
It's a bit
until
of a
you know what
maze.
you're doing.
Yeah, it's a maze. And so I'm trying to find like other media members who I can like, okay, this is where to go. And then I'm standing like sort of off to the side of this little huddle, but it's still not clear what's happening. Nobody's come out yet. And I see somebody, I hear a door open, and I see a door open in front of me. And I thought, oh, okay, I got to get out of the way. The door's, somebody's coming out. And so I back up, and I back up, and I back up, and I hear somebody like sidesteps behind me, and I turn around, and like Brad Stevens is walking from over my shoulder from the other direction. The door that was in front of me was just some nobody, and I'm like, oh, watch out. And then, oh, hello, and then before I know it, I'm trying to push my way in there just to hear what he's saying, because there's, all of a sudden he's swarmed from every direction. But yeah, it's not like a super fun story, but it's something memorable because I'm just wandering around lost, and I'm trying not to be in the way. And all of a sudden I'm like, I better step back, and oh, watch out. Sorry, sir. So yeah, that's it. That's my story.
I love the animations. Nobody on the podcast can see that, but you dancing around in your chair there is
Watch out.
as sort of a play-by-play is absolutely phenomenal.
I guess I'll kind of cheat too then. Definitely one of the most memorable experiences I'll probably ever have in the sports industry, and certainly to date, was also through an internship. I spent the summer of 2019 interning with the Indiana Fever, and so it's a smaller organization inside Pacer Sports and Entertainment. It's not like there are that many Fever employees. As a media relations person, you're talking to their players on a fairly regular basis. You're coming at the end of practice, facilitating interviews and giving them updates on whatever they need to know, whatever it might be. And so you actually get to form relationships with these players. And so I got to know their point guard, Erica Wheeler, fairly well. She has an incredible story. She grew up on the streets of Miami. She lost her mom, gave up basketball. C. Vivian Stringer convinced her to come back to Rutgers and finish her degree when she didn't want to, because that was right after she lost her mom. She lost her mom when she was in college. And so just an incredible story, but she persevered. She was playing in Puerto Rico, somehow ended up in the WNBA, and then had a phenomenal season, got to go to the All-Star game, and then won All-Star game MVP and hit, I think it was 7. I'm pretty sure she tied or broke the record for most three-pointers in the All-Star game. She had a ridiculously good game. And so it was, for her, even talking to her beforehand, you knew how much this meant to her, and just this was very much sort of a justification that she had made it and that she belonged, which just meant the world to her, because she very much knows where she came from and just doesn't take anything basketball-wise for granted. And so when she came back from the All-Star break, I spent that Monday with my boss going around Indianapolis from news station to news station doing interviews with her because, she had just put on a show on a ABC broadcast. That was where the All-Star game was broadcast. And so she was the sort of celebrity in Indianapolis sports-wise for that day. And so just getting to go around with her and just see how much that experience meant to her and how grateful she was is definitely something that I don't know if I'll ever experience something like that close and that sort of personally in my career ever. That was really, really cool to see.
Yeah, in terms of, so the moment as a media member I'll always remember is Kamar Baldwin knocking down a shot to defeat Villanova and then getting to be at the buzzer and then getting to be in the press conference after that, is something I'll always remember, and getting to sort of see that excitement and be a part of that. I'll always remember the story. I'll always remember is actually one that I don't really care for the story I actually wrote, but it took me 3.5 weeks essentially to get 5 minutes with sports psychologists that were working with Butler at the time. Because I would email them and they'd be like, I'm really busy. I was like, dude, all I need is 5 minutes to get a couple quotes from you, because really the story is about what the Butler athletes are, how they're using that resource that's available to them to, improve their minds, improve their bodies, so on and so forth. But for like 3 weeks, 2 different psychologists were telling me, I don't have 5 minutes. I don't have 5 minutes. I was like, I know you're driving. Like, you live somewhere. You don't live at Hinkle. You're either driving from Hinkle to the office that you work at or office to home. And so it took me 3.5 weeks. So, everybody has that story that they remember for one reason or another. And that is my story that I remember and that I, quite honestly would rather forget about, because it wasn't a great story, but mostly because the sources I had were, and it wasn't really one of those stories where you could just dig deeper and go get a different source. I mean, there were 2 doctors working with the team, and those were the 2 doctors. Like that's all I had. And the other one is that, talk about invaluable experience that I'm glad I sort of got to be on the side of things when I saw. I was an intern for the CBS sports affiliate in Indy, second semester, junior year. And I was working on this guy's show. And then, there's a Monday show. I was there Monday, Wednesday, Friday because of my class schedule. So we do the Monday show. I go home. And then on Tuesday, it was an Emis company or an Intercom, either Emis or Intercom. And it got bought out by Cumulus Media on Tuesday. And they got rid of that show. They canceled the show. And so I just, I had a job on Monday. The show got canceled on Tuesday. And so I had to completely change my internship on Wednesday because the guy's show I was working on was just non-existent. He was gone. His producer was now like a front desk, like phone answerer for the station until he could find a new job, because like they'd all just sort of lost their jobs. And so I went from working on a sports talk show to voicing commercials and sports updates for this station just so you can find something to do. But those are, 3 completely different things, but certainly ones that I won't forget, and certainly big parts of my student media experience in one way or another.